Roman horses had various kinds of armor, including, as we have discovered, a bronze breastplate with the relief of a lion on it. And sometimes they had other figures as well of famous people. And their harnesses and their tack were decorated with large silver and bronze attachments to show off rank and to be intimidating. And some of the horses even had armor that included an armor headpiece that wrapped around their eyes and their head to protect them, and around their forehead. So the imagery here that John is using is one of an intimidating power that is coming forward here, of invincibility. Notice also, on their heads appeared to be crowns like gold. I'm not sure what he means here. The language helps us a bit. Crowns in Greek is stephanoi, which refers to the victor's crown. Perhaps this is emblematic of their invincibility, but certainly it speaks of the menacing, daunting head of superiority of this creature, something that is superior to human beings. And then we read, their faces were like the faces of men. Notice the word like. Not quite, but similar to. Resembling. This adds to the sheer panic that these creatures will evoke. Think about it. Anytime there is anything that is created, for example, in the movies, that looks like a human being, but it's not quite a human being. Anytime you see anything like that, you can tell it is not human, and it has a terrifying look to it. In fact, I can remember with our children, the first time we took them to the circus, they saw a clown. Well, the clown looked kind of human, but it wasn't a human. And so they screamed in horror. They have no category in which to put that. That's the idea here. Their faces look like the faces of men. And this also suggests that these superhuman evil creatures are intelligent beings capable of facial expression, which only adds to the menacing horror of that look that they have. And then we read that they had hair like the hair of women, which would be, in that day, long and flowing hair. But no doubt this will be a look that is not one of beauty and of grace, but wild and unkept and filthy, adding to the ghastliness of these creatures. And I believe this is even reminiscent of the Lord's description of the Persian horde in Jeremiah 51:27, that horde that he would bring in upon the Babylonians. And there we read that he will bring up the horses like bristly locusts. So these creatures have some kind of long hair on them. And the text goes on to read that their teeth were like the teeth of lions. Obviously, a description that can only be made when a creature opens its mouth and snarls or growls in such a way as to reveal its teeth. Lion-like teeth would underscore, again, the invincible, ferocious nature of these demonic beasts. Verse 9, he tells us they had breastplates like breastplates of iron. Again, this is reminiscent of the indomitable power portrayed by the Roman legions with their armor and even the Roman war horse. The idea here is that no weapon of man will be able to defeat this demonic horde. And the sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots, of many horses rushing to battle. John witnesses here is the deafening sound of war. And the only thing that he could relate this to would be the sound of approaching chariots that could be heard from long distances, we are told. History records that that sound of approaching chariots was so intimidating, so loud, that it would cause men to melt in fear, knowing that death was imminent. In Joel chapter 2, in verse 5, the prophet spoke of the noise of chariots. So just the sound of this demonic swarm will strike fear in the hearts of men. And then in verse 10, he tells us they have tails like scorpions and stings, and in their tails is their power to hurt men for 5 months. Here's a description of their most formidable weapon, their stinger. Of the 1,500 species of scorpions that exist in the world today, only around 50 species produce enough venom to cause serious effects in humans. But out of those 50, 25 of these species pose a serious lethal risk to human beings, accounting for thousands of deaths a year worldwide. In fact, 10 times as many as snake bites. And they live mainly in North Africa and the Middle East and South America and Mexico. And they produce systemic effects in human beings, such as vomiting, cramps, blurred vision, sensitivity to light, hypersalivation, difficulty swallowing, agitation, and anaphylactic shock. And here, dear friends, the Lord tells us that the sting of these demonic creatures will, according to verse 5, be like the torment of a scorpion when it stings a man. So somehow the sting of these locust-like demons will produce the same type of systemic effects that I just mentioned, which would certainly fall within the category of what John describes here as torment. And men will want to die, but death will flee from them. And then finally, notice the Lord reveals to John a most fascinating piece of information, and that is the nature of their king. In verse 11, they have as king over them the angel of the abyss. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in the Greek, he has the name Apollyon. Now, John supplies this information about this demonic commander bilingually, as he typically did in his gospel as well as here in Revelation. And in both the Hebrew and the Greek, the Hebrew being Abaddon and the Greek Apollyon, both languages interpret this term as destroyer or exterminator. So we have this commander king that is a destroyer. Now, I do not believe that this is a reference to Satan. Nowhere in Scripture do we find Satan identified with the abyss, in which he will later be imprisoned during the millennium, as we read in Revelation chapter 20, the first 3 verses. You see, Satan has not been, and certainly he is not today, incarcerated in the abyss.